Hi everyone, and welcome to another Talk HR UK podcast channel. As usual, my name is Damien Barnett. Today I will be your host on behalf of the Alexander Lloyd business. Alexander Lloyd, of course, is a recruitment specialist firm that have been operating across the Southeast now for the last 21 years, supporting clients on HR recruitment needs. But more importantly, you're here for the podcast. So let's lead and jump straight into it. So my guest today is Sue Evans. Sue Evans is the Director of HR and Organisational Development, part of the West Sussex County Council business. And what we're really excited to do today is to try and find out a little bit more about the journey that the council have gone through. I'm sure we can all relate to the challenges that we face brought upon by the pandemic. But Sue, before we get into the nitty-gritty, if that's okay, do you mind just giving our listeners a bit of an introduction into you and your background?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm interim in West Sussex County Council. I've got an enormous privilege, really, to be spending a short amount of time with them before they appoint permanently to the role. So I've taken over a team of about 140 people in HR and OD. Super team, working very hard. Of course, I arrived, followed very quickly by COVID, so I've not met a lot of them. So it's been a very interesting journey personally for me in settling in with a team that I've not really had the chance to meet face to face on a regular basis, but we've managed and it's been good, and they've done a fantastic, and they're continuing to do a fantastic job. Prior to that, I've worked for many years. I started out life as a teacher. And I taught in a secondary school in central London for quite a long time, for a year. And then I decided that I need to do something different. So I became an army officer. I joined the army, was one of the first girls to go to Sandhurst.
Like you do.
So yes, by accident, I have to say that's I didn't really mean to do it. I thought I went to join the RAF, but ended up in the army. Had a fantastic career. Really enjoyed that, working in leadership development, education and training. And then I came out, I worked for the fire service, and then I worked for central government, and then latterly into local government. And my last permanent appointment was as HR director in Warwickshire County Council. And again, they're a big team doing some really good work. But I think local government feels to me like a really good place to be. Great sense of connection with your community, and lots to do. And good people.
Absolutely. I think what's really interesting and why I'm so excited to have you as our guest today is so that you can draw upon all your experiences from other governments. You know, there are pros and cons. There's no perfect picture like any business. So yeah, it'd be really interesting just to get some extra insights. So look, here's the obvious. COVID and pandemic, you've alluded to it. You just joined the business and suddenly you were thrust into the limelight and the fire, if you like, of the pandemic. How did you try and cope yourself initially and think about your strategy? And then what did the organisation do and react?
I think first of all, I don't think initially there was a strategy. I think most of us thought this was probably about a couple of weeks, bit of a crisis. We've had a crisis before. We're always dealing with crises in local government. We've had flooding and we've had foot and mouth, and we've all been involved in all of those. So actually we kind of, I think, took it on the chin and said, oh, here comes another challenge. I don't think it was until we were probably a good month in that I think we realised that this was longer haul. And, you know, I think if anybody had said that this was going to be 6 months, a year, we'd have been a bit surprised. So I think we kind of went straight into operational response, which is good and was absolutely what's needed. And I think the strategy has come later. So we're now strategizing a little bit more. We're now thinking about the long term. We're now thinking about the longer term impact on our workforce, the longer term impact on our citizens, as we try to think about how we might rebuild and build back better, as opposed to just do what we did before. So it's been a really good opportunity to take stock and to think. But we're still very busy. So wave one came, we're well into wave two with people who are still quite tired from wave one. So managing mental health, physical health, trying to support a workforce that's hugely under pressure, but also is remote from you, has been one of the biggest challenges. But we have risen to it really well.
I definitely want to come back to that sort of mental health and employee engagement, and how do you try and keep the local government and then the borough and the council, the workforce engaged. But before we delve into that, do you mind just giving us a bit of insight into the state of play just before you joined and where the council was? Like, for example, were you ready for remote working, and did you have everything set up?
Well, to be fair, when I arrived in West Sussex, I was really impressed with the degree of connectivity. So I arrived, and on day one, I was presented with a laptop. They were very geared up with Skype, which was, you know, was working very well. So I felt very connected to everybody quite quickly. I don't think anybody was expecting this to be so quick, the transition from working in offices as everybody had been. Like every council, West Sussex had got a programme of moving to AGILE or smart working. And everywhere I've been for the last few years, we've been working on modern and flexible working, agile working. But of course, what COVID did was to accelerate that. I came across a phrase recently which says necessity is the mother of implementation. And I think that's great, because we'd all known that this is kind of this modern, giving people more flexibility, giving people choice about how and where they work, moving away from managing by presenteeism to managing by outcomes, to thinking about how you manage remote teams has been on everybody's agenda. I was doing it when I was full-time in Warwickshire 3 or 4 years ago. And actually what COVID has done is to give us that real momentum to do it quickly. So within 5 days, we'd got people up and running and working from home. We had some glitches, wouldn't everybody? The problem with the bandwidth, but our IT department really stepped up. And now we've gradually, over the next couple of months, we then ran out Teams. So now we work on Microsoft Teams, and I think it's given us a very different way and feel of working. Clearly in the county council, excuse me, clearly in the county council, there are those people for whom working at home is not an option. We have frontline teams, we have fire and rescue services, we've got people in caring environments, we've got people who work in children's services, for whom working at home isn't an option. So finding ways to keep them safe through the pandemic was another challenge. So enabling them to work safely, but to engage with their clients has been another issue. But we'd moved everybody pretty quickly into remote working, which was fantastic.
It sounds amazing. I'm almost fearful from what you just said there, just the task at hand, because most businesses have 1 or 2, maybe 3 verticals that they specialize within, and it's pretty easy to adjust because there'll be commonality across the group. You've effectively got a dozen different multifaceted businesses or organizations, streams, if you like, and they all have different needs.
Of course. And of course, we're not a business that sells things. We're a business that is we're a service industry largely. So we have client needs, which are hugely variable and spread right across a large geographical area. So big challenge to keep people safe, big challenge to help support the economy. You know, we have highways, we have schools, we have, you know, social care, adult social care, children's social care, all sorts of different facets to our business. And of course, our real focus is around communities and supporting and enabling communities and looking after the most vulnerable in our society. And therefore, there's a kind of a need for us to react and respond, not just decide how we're going to do things. We're responding to client need. So it's more complicated, I think.
Absolutely. I not to go too political. So of course, if there's certain things that you would rather we stay away from, feel free. But from an organizational perspective, did you get much in the way of funding to be able to do everything you needed? Or again, each decision is calculated, it's measured, and you can't do it all?
Well, there isn't a bottomless pit of money, as you might imagine, and the government were very quick to say that they would support us in terms of financial support for the COVID response. And of course, we're having now to then justify what we've done. And we are, you know, we're public servants and we're dealing with public money, so we're careful about where we spend it. But actually, we have had what we've needed to do to meet the COVID response. I think
It's
we're
really
going to
refreshing.
start, which is good, but I think now we're going to start counting the cost. And of course, you will have seen in the local press that we're now facing quite significant savings targets. And we're having to work on a new budget that means that we're plugging a very big hole across the budget, which means we're having to really prioritise and think very hard about what we do and how we do it, and making efficiency savings and still running a COVID pandemic. So that's the tension for us, and will always be. Local government funding is always fairly precarious, I think.
Yeah, and again, that's why I kind of fear that we don't want to go too political with this. We just want to kind of keep it fairly broad, fairly loose. Okay, so we spoke a little bit about employee engagement. You said how important that was to you and to the business. What sort of things have you, as an organisation, managed to roll out, and where do you think you are on that sort of spectrum of mental health and wellbeing?
Well, I mean, two things. One is, of course, I think you realise as soon as you send your workforce home to work from home and you don't see them, there is less opportunity to engage on a one-to-one basis. HR is a very people-focused part of the business, as you might imagine. I would normally work on the basis of wandering around the office, talking to people, one-to-one engagement, which I think that's my belief, is that's what good leaders do. You know, you engage with people, you understand people. I like the trusted advisor model, which talks about intimacy. So I always say it's not about sleeping with your staff, but it is about kind of really understanding who they are, what makes them tick, what excites them, what interests them, what worries them. And of course, you're doing that more remotely. That's quite hard. So we've had to work much harder at that. We've got good communications. Our comms team are second to none. So we've rolled out an awful lot of good work around what we call our big exchange. So running the intranet, allowing people messaging, constant messaging, recognizing and valuing people's contribution. So lots of praise and thanks, lots of a big notice board that says, actually, do you know, this team have done this. Thank you very much for this week. Every Friday, I write what I call the Friday thank you note. So I started it when I first arrived because I wasn't seeing people. So I just started off on the first Friday I was there saying, look, I've had a really good week. Thank you, everybody that's helped me this week. Thank you very much. I met so-and-so. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing that. And it's kind of grown. And it's now a much longer message that goes out every Friday. And it's lovely to be able to say, thank you to that team for doing this, or thank you to that person. And it's very specific. And it is appreciated. And as I say, we've just come back. We've done a pulse survey this week. We don't run big production staff surveys. We do regular pulse surveys to try to help to understand what's happening with the workforce. I think they're much better for you than the big production pieces. Give you far more granular information that's focused and targeted, and then you can do something about it and really demonstrate that you've heard and understood and you're doing something different. Well, that's come back, and our visibility, particularly in HR, visibility has increased.
Wow.
Well, seeing as I live in the Cotswolds and most of my team live in West Sussex, I think that's quite something of a miracle, really.
That's
so
incredible.
I think I put down to modern technology and the fact that I can to see team meetings, I can drop into team meetings. It's very easy to kind of engage with people in that way. But it is about that regular connection, good team meetings, keeping those processes going, even though people are working remotely. What everybody says is you miss out on the water cooler moments, don't you? The chat in the kitchen, the chat in the corridor. We can't do that, but we have had virtual tea breaks. And I've been able to drop into team coffee breaks and just chat. And we've been planning a big Christmas do, sort of a virtual Christmas do, and we're just planning what that will look like and how we can make that fun. But that's about engaging, isn't it, with people, but also recognizing what people are doing, understanding the issues that they've got, and regular feedback, really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if we go back to that employee engagement and we think about all those soft touches that we're probably missing, the casual making a cup of tea, having a chat with somebody who they probably frequently have, you know, whether it's a football conversation, how's your weekend, how's the children, whatever it may be, We are humans, and we need that extra layer of engagement. And like you said, HR is also notorious for needing and wanting that. That's why we choose that profession. We like engaging with people.
Yeah, and what I have noticed in West Sussex, we've got a very good leader in our chief exec. She is a superb leader, and therefore, even at the most senior meetings, the opening of every single senior meeting that I've been in has been, how is everybody? Is there anything we need to know? Is there stuff we need to be thinking about? How are your teams? How are you? And I think that's a very good role modeling of those kind of behaviors, which say, actually, business is really important, but let's find out how the people are that are doing our business.
And it's so easy to, absolutely, and it's so easy to almost forget that with all the stresses that we're all going through, especially business owners or business leaders, heads of organizations. We are going through a challenging time. So you'd almost forgive them if they didn't say, how are you?
Yeah.
But ironically, you're saying to get the best out of people, that's the first thing we need to be thinking and leading from. I love that.
And in terms of mental health and well-being, how people are really matters. So we've invested in our staff networks, talking to our staff networks to encourage people to talk about mental health. I did a talking heads recently talking about mental health and what that means to me and my experience of mental health issues. And I think it's really important that senior managers are as open as they can be and give people the opportunity to have those conversations genuinely and for real.
It's absolutely leading from the front, isn't it? You've got to kind of show a little bit of vulnerability for others to follow suit. I think the mental health and well-being is such a hot topic for us. And we've done 3 podcasts dedicated to that from different perspectives and walks of lives. And it's really interesting. A lot of speakers from a mental health and well-being perspective, they chose that profession after a different career and a different life. And that's because of what was kind of thrust upon them really at whatever time in their life cycle. And they said, you know what, I don't want to do this. I want to be an advocate for this cause and to help. Which I think is amazing. Okay, so you've had a really good success ratio in terms of adjusting to the pandemic. You've got a highly engaged organisation by the seams of it, and you're doing all the good stuff. What else is happening at the council? What's the plans for next year?
Well, the planning is underway. We're doing a big planning exercise at the moment around what we're calling the reset plan. So that's looking at the West Sussex plan and all of the key elements that are in there, the key priorities for West Sussex as a county council and the work that it does for the people of Sussex. And that's been done in a very collaborative way with our different levels of leadership, contributing to that, helping to develop it, working out how we're going to deliver it, how we're going to measure it, and thinking about really the how as well as the what. So it's been quite an interesting process. We're in the middle of that at the moment, alongside the budget planning, which is hugely challenging, of course. And that will come together. And alongside it, in HR and OD, our main contribution is around a people framework. So we've been doing a big piece of work, developing a people framework, which is about how we will value, support and empower our workforce to deliver our ambitions. There's 2 things, 2 big things in an organisation that make the difference between you're being successful and not, and that's the people and the money. And you need, we very often, organisations are very good at thinking about the money, but they don't necessarily think about the people. So we've developed a framework. We're developing a framework at the moment based on some key pillars, one of which is leadership, one of which is well-being, values, ways of working. There's another pillar which is around performance and development, and another pillar around talent and resourcing. And all the work that sits within that framework is designed to give us the workforce that we need today and thinking about the workforce that we need tomorrow. So we're thinking about how we recruit, retain, develop, energize, motivate and lead a workforce that can really deliver these ambitions for West Sussex. Because you can have all the words in the world, what you need is everybody's shoulder to the wheel. Everybody understands where we're going. So there's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of setting of vision, there's a lot of communicating what that vision is about, and then enabling leaders to lead with purpose so that everybody knows where we're trying to get to and can be empowered in order to help us get there. And there's a huge sense of purpose and goodwill right across the council, which is great to see.
It sounds like you're all completely on the same page, or at least working towards the same goal now.
Yeah.
I noticed, even from an obvious recruitment perspective, just the amount of hires that you'd gone through even during the pandemic. You were one of the very few organisations, of course, reacting to some of the extra resources you needed.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the importance of even that alone, of course, you want to save on recruitment fees and hire rights and timelines, etc. But aligning that to your agenda, you need to hire the right people for the long term. It goes back to that tomorrow analogy that you're saying.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're really keen to do is to stabilise the leadership. They've had a lot of churn at the top end of West Sussex. You know, they've had a change of senior leaders and a change of political leadership as well as officer leadership. And we've got children's services being completely revamped. They're on a massive improvement journey. So some of the recruitment that we've done recently, and we've done it ourselves, has been about getting the right people in to drive that improvement journey. And I'm a great believer that, you know, we've invested quite a lot in our resourcing team, and they are absolutely superb. We've got very good people with good experience in our resourcing team. So actually, they know what we're looking for. They can talk with absolute conviction around what it means to work in West Sussex, because they can do it from their own perspective. Absolutely. And we've had some fantastic hires, really fantastic hires in the last few months, even given pandemic. So it's great. And it's good to see that we've now building a really strong leadership team in our children at the top end of our children's services, which will make a big difference to the lives of children in Sussex. And it's so exciting to be part of that.
And, you know, I obviously have a biased approach because I live locally and I can relate to West Sussex County Council. I have an added interest because it benefits me, my friends, my family. And, you know, everybody will always have an opinion. You can't please everybody, but it's so refreshing to hear this story. And we talk about employee brand all the time. And I think for me personally, a lot of local governments haven't used a platform or a spokesperson and almost the marketing side, because I guess that's almost deemed as a luxury. We don't need to, but we should. There's some really good stories out there.
We're a bit nervous about branding, a little bit nervous about branding, but I think, and particularly from an HR perspective, there are three things that I think HR need to focus on. One is about providing a very robust foundation for HR and OD. And there is in West Sussex. There's a very strong HR offer, a very strong OD offer, and that's quite robust. So you get your policy and your practice right, because the next thing you're doing is trying to build yourself into becoming an employer of choice. So people choose to come and work for you and they choose to stay. And the third thing we should be concerning ourselves with in HR is making it a great place to work, because you can have everything you want, but if it's not a great place to work, people won't stay. They'll want to go somewhere else. And once you've got that, actually, you don't need to talk about brands. You need to talk about what it is that makes it a great place to work. And that's great people. You know, it's a good career. You can build a fantastic career in local government, which is what I've done. I've had a marvelous career across local government. It's full of people who really understand the connection between community and the work that you do. There's a real sense of social value in your contribution, and there's a real opportunity to build a very interesting and fulfilling career. That's the message we need to get out, and that's our brand, isn't it? That is our brand.
It absolutely, it's that community piece, because everybody that wants to listen, they will listen because they've got an added interest. I really, really hope there are other people in local government listening to you, being inspired to want to do something and push the cause. And even if it's not West Sussex, it could be Reigate, it could be anybody, Tambridge, it doesn't really matter. But I think the more people start communicating all the good things and also the challenges you face so that we sympathize and empathize, I think the better, because then we'll all rationalize and not have so many opinions without the full facts. Does that make sense?
But I want good people. I want good people in West Sussex. I want good people to come to work for West Sussex. We've got to make it that so. So we've got to have very good HR. HR have a really central role in this. And one of the things that's happened, I think, through the pandemic is HR have had to step up. We've been involved right the way through in policies, in supporting staff, in generating redeployment and making sure we've got the right people to do things. But we have kept those business as usual. So we've moved all of our learning and development online, which has been a fantastic achievement.
Already?
So we've been doing that from the beginning of the pandemic. So wow. So all of our mandatory training is now online, and there's no reason why we can't maintain the skill level of our services.
I tell you what,
very important.
There's a huge number of privately owned businesses, SMEs, even probably FTSE 250 that are thinking we are so far behind the curve on things like that.
Yeah, no, most of our stuff's online. We found different ways of delivering things. So for instance, tomorrow I'm running a webinar tomorrow for all of HR to get them together, to kind of give them a briefing and give them a progress report on where we are in terms of developing the people framework. And that's just not me, that's all the people who are leading our projects, who are contributing to that work and doing lots of stuff. So we can all get together and we can understand where it is and why it's so important. And that's a fantastic thing to be able to do. So you can have everybody on this webinar, which is fab.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's so good to hear. As we slowly, I guess, start wrapping up the podcast, Sue, I'm keen just to understand your viewpoints on how the work-life balance is going to be maybe moving forward, where you think is the majority of the audience. Like, what are your expectations moving forward?
I really hope that we can maintain this nice balance of some working from home and some working in the office. I think most people don't want to be in their own environment without engaging with other people. Most of us operate around human connectivity, and you wouldn't expect an HR person to say anything different. But actually, I think we might be moving towards an 80-20 split, where people will spend 80% of their time doing stuff probably remotely, and 20% of their time, but working collaboratively, using our spaces differently, coming into the office for very specific reason, which is for that connection, that collaborative working, and shaping things very differently. And I hope that we don't lose all the good stuff. We've done a lot of work in West Sussex over the last few weeks around reflective practice. And that's about talking to teams about what's worked well, what needs to change, what might be different. And what's coming back is people really appreciate the choice and the ability to be flexible. They miss their colleagues, they miss that connection. So we've got to find a way to drive that balance. And for some people, working from home just doesn't work. And so we've taken a decision that if people are struggling, either they can't physically create the right environment for working, it's affecting their mental health, then we have made space available in our offices for them to work, because that's the right thing to do. And it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's about that flexibility and agility, which is where we're at the moment. And I'm leading a group in West Sussex called New Ways of Working. And what we're trying to do is to learn the lessons from COVID and decide how best to organise ourselves and how best to take forward the good stuff and leave the baggage behind. So the days of going into an office every day and sitting in the same place, I think, are probably long gone for most people.
You're trying to be as strategic, as commercial. What can we do that just gives us an extra element of positivity to attract people to our business, but also to retain and engage the existing workforce?
And that's not easy. It's not easy. And different people want different things, and different people need different things because of the nature of the work they're doing. And if you put it in a business context, that's about understanding what is the business need and how best to meet that, but also how to build in that flexibility and agility means that you work in the best way for you to deliver your aims and ambitions and get stuff done. But we'll move away from this presenteeism and, I'm here for long hours, therefore I must be really good. So it's about what you do, and not where and when you do it.
It's amazing just seeing the cultural difference in society alone. And actually, I think before the pandemic forced the hand of many business leaders and organizations on this matter, I think most people thought working from home would be amazing. And actually, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, is everybody wants a balance and not everybody loves it. And actually that probably must give some business leaders who were cautious initially some comfort to go, actually, it's not like I'm not going to ever see my business or my staff and my workforce. I'm probably going to see them just as much, and they're going to be even more productive because they're going to be engaged.
But the big question is trust, isn't it? And we ask a question in our survey around, I'm trusted to do my job. I'm trusted and empowered to do my job. And actually, the interesting thing, COVID has shown that we can trust and empower our staff to do what we need them to do. And we don't need to be watching whether they're sitting on the... I did laugh. I had a boss actually many years ago. He said to me, we were on a flexible working project. And he said, Sue, how do I know though, when you're working from home, how do I know that you're not in Sainsbury's? And I said, well, you don't know that I'm not in Sainsbury's. I said, but when you phone me, do I answer the phone? Do I do what you need me to do? Do I meet my deadlines? Do I deliver what I have to deliver? Yes. I said, well, that's what you need to know then. You don't need to know where I am.
That's crazy.
And I think there's something there about moving people away from thinking about work is somewhere you go. Work is not somewhere you go. It's something you do. And that, understanding outcomes, measuring people's performance by what they're producing and their contribution is far more useful to us than just whether or not they're in their seat. Because you don't know what they're doing when they're in the office, let alone what they're doing when they're out of it. So you've got to think differently.
Absolutely. And even the small amount of days that I have spent in the office, because I now spend so little time with my colleagues, it's incredibly refreshing. But I also then find myself going, hang on, I've spent too long trying to play catch up and have a chat. So it's finding the balance. And, I think what's also really, really interesting, I saw there was an article on BBC News a couple of months ago where somebody had launched a tech product on the mouse cursor, and it could track the mouse moving on somebody's computer screen. I just thought that is how that even became a business concept. I do not know. And I think we've seen a lot of conversations about hiring on trust. If you don't trust them, why do you hire them, etc. But
absolutely. And I have had that conversation, fortunately not in West Sussex, because we seem to have good leaders and managers who are enlightened. But I said, if you don't trust your staff, who appointed them? Did you sit on that panel? Did you appoint somebody you don't trust? And that's quite a salutary question, isn't it? The other one is, don't judge everybody by your own standards. So
yeah, it's a huge cultural difference, and I think we'll see more on that. And to be fair, I do think a lot of organizations and businesses, I get the opportunity to speak to so many different companies and clients, and I can work out who's really embracing it and who's probably just flirting with the idea and really just wants to go back to old ways.
Yeah, but for some people, I think particularly sometimes for youngsters who are living in shared accommodation, setting up a workspace that's private and quiet, having enough space to do that without all your housemates around you, everybody trying to do stuff, it's quite difficult for some people. And for some who live alone, it can be quite isolating. So we need to think more broadly about who needs what and how best to meet those needs. So I think we'll see a shift in the way that we use space. So I can see us taking away rafts of desks and having much more open meeting space where people can get together to collaborate, to talk. And that's why you're in the office. But actually working on documents and doing bits of stuff, you can do that anywhere. And touching down spaces and using different spaces. It's good.
Definitely. I think it was only yesterday I saw London, the construction workforce for work premises had halved. And I appreciate the pandemic's also hit, but I think they're also mindful that demand's not going to be as high anymore moving forward. I think it is about the agility and flexibility.
Yeah. And of course, travel. Our travel costs are down by 2/3, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And
our printing costs have reduced to the extent that if you put all the paper that we've saved end to end, it's the same height as Ben Nevis, apparently.
Oh, you're joking.
I don't know who works these things out. They're obviously much cleverer than me, but it's quite an interesting statistic, isn't it?
That's amazing.
That if people are not, because you can, you do stuff because you can, because you always have. So you find different ways to do things. And I come back to that. It's necessity is the mother of implementation.
Sue, this was incredibly refreshing. It's been an absolute delight to have you on today. So thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. It's been great to talk to you. It's gone very fast. I think I don't know if I've said anything of any use to anybody, but it's been good fun.
Well, do you know what? I think it'll be incredibly insightful for so many. So look, it's always appreciated. Thank you so much for coming on to the Talk HR UK podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. All the best.
Thank you. Bye.